The first gunshot rings out just as Michael Reynolds finishes teaching his 6-year-old daughters how to hold a rifle properly. The sound echoes across the golden Montana wheat fields, sharp and deliberate, cutting through the peaceful October afternoon like a blade through silk. "Daddy, why do some people want to hurt us?" Sophie asks, her small hands still gripping the toy rifle with perfect form, just as her father taught her. Her twin sister Sarah stands beside her, clutching a smooth riverstone she found moments earlier, treating it like the most precious treasure in the world. Michael's weathered face, marked by 2 tours in Afghanistan and 5 years of single parenthood, hardens as he scans the horizon. Black smoke rises from beyond the tree line where the old fence meets Highway 89. His military instincts, dormant for years but never truly dead, surge back to life with frightening clarity. Because sometimes, sweetheart, good people have to protect others from bad people, he says, his voice calm despite the tension coiling in his shoulders. He adjusts the faded military cap that has been his constant companion since discharge, a talisman of the man he used to be. The second gunshot comes closer, much closer. 3 minutes later, a woman covered in blood will change their lives forever. But first, Michael Reynolds needs to understand what he's seeing. The smoke isn't from a backfire or a hunter's rifle. It's from a vehicle crash. And the metallic gleam catching the afternoon sun belongs to an expensive SUV that has no business being on this remote stretch of Montana highway. "Girls, inside. Now." His command voice emerges without conscious thought, the tone that once moved elite soldiers across battlefields. Sophie and Sarah respond instantly, their faces serious. They've heard this voice before during thunderstorms and when strangers come to the ranch asking too many questions. Michael moves toward the fence line with practiced efficiency, every step calculated, every sense alert. The rifle in his hands is no longer a teaching tool but a weapon. His eyes sweep the terrain with tactical precision, noting escape routes, cover positions, potential threats. The woman appears as he crests the small hill overlooking the highway. She sits slumped against a fence post, designer clothes torn and dirty, blood trickling from a cut above her left eyebrow. Her auburn hair, probably perfectly styled this morning, now hangs in matted strands around a face that speaks of intelligence, determination, and barely controlled terror. Her SUV lies in the ditch 20 yards away, steam rising from its crumpled hood like smoke from a funeral pyre. The front end is completely destroyed, but this wasn't a simple accident. The rear window has been shot out, and bullet holes perforate the driver's side door in a neat pattern that speaks of professional marksmanship. Michael approaches with the caution of a man who has walked through too many ambushes to trust peaceful scenes. The woman looks up as he nears, and he feels his breath catch. Despite the injuries and dirt, she possesses a striking beauty, but it's her eyes that stop him cold. Emerald green and filled with a mixture of pain and fear he recognizes immediately. The kind of fear he's seen in war zones, in the eyes of people who know they're being hunted by those with superior resources and unlimited patience. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" he asks, his voice deliberately calm while his mind catalogs details. Expensive jewelry that screams wealth and position. Hands soft but with calluses that suggest she's not helpless. A bearing that speaks of boardrooms and power, now brought low by circumstances beyond her control. She tries to stand but winces, clutching her left arm. "I'm Rachel Blackwood." The name means nothing to him initially, but something in her voice suggests it should. "My car." She gestures weakly toward the wreckage, and Michael notices her hands are trembling, not from pain but from adrenaline crash. "We need to get you to a hospital," he says, already reaching for his phone. The practical part of his mind notices that medical attention is the logical first step, but the soldier in him is screaming warnings about the bullet holes and the way she keeps glancing toward the road. "No." Her voice cracks like a whip, sharp with panic. Her hands shoot out to grab his wrist with surprising strength. "Please, no hospitals, no police. I just need somewhere safe to think." The desperation in her eyes makes Michael hesitate. 20 years in special forces taught him to read people in seconds, a skill that has kept him and his men alive through countless operations. This woman isn't just injured. She's running from something or someone with enough power to make hospitals and police stations feel like traps rather than sanctuaries. The twins have crept closer despite his earlier command, their curiosity overwhelming their trained obedience. Sophie's blonde pigtails bounce as she studies the stranger with the fearless assessment only children possess. Sarah hangs back, her natural shyness warring with concern for the hurt woman. "Is the pretty lady hurt, Daddy?" Sophie whispers, her small hands slipping into his with the absolute trust that never fails to humble him. Her presence reminds him that this isn't a combat zone, that he's a father first and a soldier second, that his daughter's safety trumps every other consideration. Rachel's expression softens as she looks at the twins, and Michael sees something genuine break through her fear. "Hello, beautiful girls. What are your names?" "I'm Sophie, and that's Sarah." "We're six," Sophie announces with typical directness, pointing to her sister, who offers a shy wave from behind Michael's leg. "Daddy, can we help her?" Sarah's tender heart has already engaged despite her shyness, and Michael sees the same compassion that led him to help wounded civilians in Afghanistan, the same instinct that makes good people do dangerous things for strangers. He studies Rachel's face again, noting the way genuine warmth appears when she looks at his daughters. His threat assessment skills, honed over decades of life or death decisions, search for deception and find none. Whatever brought this woman to his fence line, her response to his children is absolutely authentic. "The farmhouse is just over that hill," he hears himself saying, making a decision based on instinct rather than logic. "You can clean up, and we'll figure out what to do next." As he helps Rachel to her feet, supporting her weight with the same steady strength that has carried wounded comrades across battlefields, Michael Reynolds has no idea he has just made a decision that will transform all their lives forever. But somewhere in the back of his mind, the part that has kept him alive through 2 wars and 5 years of single parenthood, a small voice whispers that this moment will be the fulcrum on which everything else turns. The Reynolds farmhouse stands like a sentinel against the Montana sky, its white clapboard siding and red brick chimney telling stories of 4 generations of honorable men who worked this land when not answering their country's call to arms. Every Reynolds man since the Civil War has served, and the family has the folded flags to prove it. Michael helps Rachel up the front porch steps while Sophie and Sarah race ahead to open the screen door, their excitement at having a visitor overriding their earlier wariness. "Careful on that bottom step," Michael warns, steadying Rachel as she stumbles slightly. It's been loose for months. He makes a mental note to fix it today. Procrastination isn't a luxury a single father can afford, especially one who learned in the harshest environments that small oversights can have fatal consequences. Inside, the house breathes warmth and lived in comfort. Family photos line the mantel above a stone fireplace, and children's drawings cover the refrigerator in a riot of crayon colors. Among the happy images of the twins and their father are several of a beautiful blonde woman with a radiant smile. Elizabeth, forever frozen in time, watching over the family she left behind. "Sit here." Michael guides Rachel to the kitchen table, his movements efficient and purposeful. "Let me get the first aid kit." His medical training, originally designed for battlefield trauma, has been put to gentler use lately with skinned knees and scraped elbows, but he still maintains the supplies and skills of a combat medic. While Michael rummages through cabinets, Rachel studies the photographs scattered across a side table. One shows Michael in his dress uniform, stern and powerful, every inch the professional soldier. Another captures him teaching the twins to ride their first bicycles, his protective hands hovering just inches from their seats, ready to catch them if they fall. "Where's their mother?" Rachel asks courtly when Michael returns with medical supplies, her voice careful and respectful. Michael's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly, the only outward sign of pain that never fully heals. "Car accident 5 years ago. Drunk driver crossed the center line." The words are clipped, efficient, conveying information without emotion. A soldier's report delivered to minimize the reopening of wounds that never properly close. But Rachel doesn't miss the flash of anguish in his eyes, or the way his hand unconsciously moves to the wedding band he still wears, a circle of gold that represents promises kept even beyond death. He begins cleaning the cut on Rachel's forehead with gentle efficiency, his large, calloused hands surprisingly delicate. "The girls barely remember her now," he says softly. his voice carrying the weight of a man who has shouldered impossible burdens. Sometimes that seems worse than the grief. Sarah appears at Rachel's elbow, clutching a well-loved teddy bear missing one cheek and most of its stuffing. "This is Captain Whiskers," she announces solemnly. "He makes everything better when you're hurt." Rachel accepts the bear with tears threatening, touched by the simple generosity of a child who offers her most precious possession to comfort a stranger. "Thank you, sweetie. He's perfect." "Can you stay for dinner?" Sophie asks hopefully, appearing on Rachel's other side with the sudden materialization children master. "Daddy makes the best stew in Montana. He learned to cook in the Army." Michael catches Rachel's eye over his daughter's heads, his expression gentle but questioning. The invitation is implicit in his look, but he won't pressure her. This is her choice, her decision about how much trust she's willing to place in a man she met less than an hour ago. "You're welcome to stay until you feel ready to handle whatever you need to handle," he says quietly. The offer is simple, direct, a soldier's approach to problem solving. Identify the need, address it, move forward. For the first time since leaving Seattle 3 days ago, Rachel feels something she had almost forgotten existed. Safety. Not the illusion of security that money and position provide, but the real thing. The kind that comes from being in the presence of someone who has made protection of others his life's work, someone whose word is his bond. But safety is a luxury she can't afford right now. Not with everything that happened in Seattle. Not with the decisions she made that led her to run in the first place. The people hunting her have resources beyond imagination, patience measured in decades, and a willingness to eliminate anyone who threatens their carefully constructed empire of corruption. "I should probably call someone," she says, reaching instinctively for her purse before remembering it's still in the wreckage along with everything else that connected her to her old life. "Your phone was destroyed in the crash," Michael observes with the practical assessment of a man accustomed to inventorying assets and liabilities. "Who do you need to reach? Family?" Rachel's laugh carries no humor, only the bitter knowledge of someone who has learned that blood relationships provide no guarantee of loyalty. "Family isn't exactly an option right now." The twins exchange glances with the intuitive communication only twins possess, their identical faces reflecting the wisdom children sometimes display when adults think they're not paying attention. Sarah climbs onto the chair next to Rachel while Sophie leans against her father's side, both offering the uncomplicated comfort of presence. "When I'm scared, Daddy tells me stories about brave soldiers," Sarah offers, her voice carrying the shy kindness that defines her personality. "Would you like to hear about the time Daddy saved a whole village?" Rachel smiles genuinely for the first time since the crash, warmed by the child's sweet attempt to provide comfort through the sharing of her father's heroism. "I'd love that." As Sarah launches into an elaborately embellished tale of her father's military service, complete with dramatic gestures and sound effects provided by Sophie, Rachel feels something she hasn't experienced in years settling around her like a warm blanket. Peace, the kind that comes not from the absence of danger, but from being surrounded by people who understand that some things are worth fighting for. But even as she listens to the child's sweet voice spinning tales of heroism and honor, her mind races with the complications of her situation. Someone will be looking for her soon. The people she trusted, the empire she built, the enemies she made, they will all want answers. And when they find her here in this perfect little world that Michael Reynolds has created for his daughters, she knows with sick certainty that she will destroy it all. The weight of that knowledge settles on her shoulders like a lead blanket, even as Sophie begins adding dramatic sound effects to her sister's story. What Rachel doesn't realize is that Michael Reynolds is watching her with the careful assessment of a man who has spent decades identifying threats, and he sees far more than she intends to reveal. The slight tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes dart toward the windows, the manner in which she holds herself ready to move at a moment's notice. All signs he recognizes from his own experience with hunted people. But what concerns him more than her obvious fear is the guilt he sees in her eyes. The look of someone who believes they bring destruction to everything they touch. It's an expression he's worn himself, and he knows with absolute certainty that whatever brought Rachel Blackwood to his fence line, she's running from something that has already cost her more than money or position. She's lost her faith in the possibility of sanctuary. And that's a wound that cuts deeper than any physical injury. The question now is whether Michael Reynolds, a man who has spent his life protecting others, can find a way to give her back what she's lost, or whether the forces pursuing her will prove too powerful, even for a man who has never met an impossible mission he wouldn't accept. Outside, the Montana wind picks up, carrying with it the scent of coming winter and the distant sound of approaching vehicles. Michael's head tilts slightly, his enhanced hearing detecting what civilian ears would miss. Two engines, running in formation, moving faster than anyone has business driving on these back roads. The peace that has settled over his kitchen evaporates in an instant as every combat instinct he possesses screams to life. Whatever Rachel Blackwood is running from, it has just found her. And now, for better or worse, it has found his family too. The sound grows closer, and Michael's tactical mind automatically shifts into threat assessment mode. He moves to the window with fluid precision, positioning himself where he can observe without being seen, a skill burned into his nervous system by years of urban warfare and counterinsurgency operations. Two black SUVs with tinted windows approach the farmhouse, their movements coordinated in a way that screams professional surveillance. They're not lost tourists or traveling salesmen. These are people who know exactly where they're going and why they're here. "Girls, go to your room and play the quiet game," Michael says, his voice carrying the calm authority that brooks no argument. Sophie and Sarah respond immediately, recognizing the tone that means absolute obedience without question. They've practiced this drill before, though Michael prayed they'd never need it. Rachel has gone rigid beside him, her face draining of color as she recognizes the vehicles. "They found me," she whispers, and Michael hears 20 different emotions in those three words. Fear, certainly, but also resignation, guilt, and something that might be relief that the running is finally over. "Who are they?" Michael asks, already moving toward the gun safe hidden behind a false panel in the kitchen pantry. His movements are economical, practiced, the muscle memory of a man who has prepared for this moment even while hoping it would never come. "Corporate security," Rachel says, but there's something in her voice that suggests the truth is more complicated. "They work for people who don't like loose ends." Michael retrieves a tactical shotgun and a sidearm, checking both weapons with the automatic efficiency of someone for whom firearms are tools rather than symbols. "How badly do they want you?" Rachel watches him prepare for what might come, and she sees in his movements the same deadly competence that saved her brother's life in Afghanistan. "Badly enough to follow me 1,500 miles. Badly enough to shoot out my back window on a public highway." The vehicles have stopped at the end of his driveway, positioning themselves to block any escape route while maintaining enough distance to avoid immediate confrontation. Professional work that suggests these aren't ordinary corporate security guards but people with military or law enforcement backgrounds. "Rachel," Michael says, and something in the way he speaks her name makes her look directly at him. "I need to know what we're dealing with. The truth, all of it. Because if this goes bad, my daughter's lives are on the line, and I won't make tactical decisions based on incomplete intelligence." She takes a deep breath, knowing that the man beside her deserves honesty even if it destroys the fragile sanctuary she's found. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my company's security technology was being used illegally. Not just corporate espionage, but selling access to foreign intelligence services. When I tried to expose it internally, I learned the corruption went all the way to the top, including the FBI agents supposedly investigating the original breach. Michael processes this information with the systematic approach of a professional intelligence analyst. "So you gathered evidence and ran." "I gathered evidence and become a target. They've been using my own company's surveillance technology to track me across 3 states. Every credit card transaction, every cell phone ping, every traffic camera. They know where I've been, where I'm going, and who I've talked to. Including me," Michael concludes grimly. "Which means this stops being about you and starts being about my family." Outside, car doors slam with mechanical precision. Michael counts 4 distinct sounds, suggesting at least 2 teams of 2 operators each. Standard surveillance protocol would place additional assets at perimeter positions, bringing the total opposition force to somewhere between 6 and 8 professionals. "I'm sorry," Rachel says, and Michael hears genuine anguish in her voice. I never meant to bring this to your door. I should leave now, draw them away from here. Too late for that, Michael replies, moving to a second window to assess the approaching threat. And besides, you're forgetting something important. What's that? Michael's eyes hold the cold determination that once made him legendary among special operations forces. Nobody threatens my daughters in their own home and walks away. The knock on the front door comes exactly 3 minutes later. Polite but insistent. Professional courtesy masking overwhelming force. The kind of approach that gives targets a chance to surrender peacefully while making clear that resistance will be met with superior firepower. Michael positions Rachel behind the kitchen island, where she'll have cover and concealment if shooting starts, then moves to the front door with his sidearm holstered but accessible. 20 years of combat experience has taught him that sometimes the best defense is controlled aggression, and right now he needs to establish dominance before his opponents realize how outnumbered he is. He opens the door to find two men in expensive suits, their bearing and posture screaming federal law enforcement despite their civilian appearance. The one in front is tall and lean, with prematurely gray hair, while his partner is shorter but more heavily built, with the patient stance of someone accustomed to waiting for violence to begin. "Mr. Reynolds," the tall one says, his voice carrying just enough authority to suggest government credentials without being overtly threatening. "My name is Agent Davidson. This is Agent Chen. We're with a federal task force investigating cybersecurity breaches. We have reason to believe you may be harboring a fugitive from justice." Michael studies both men with the careful assessment of a professional warrior evaluating potential enemies. Their positioning is textbook, with Davidson taking point while Chen maintains overwatch, both positioned to draw weapons or call for backup without telegraphing their intentions. "I'm not harboring anyone," Michael replies calmly, "but you're welcome to present a warrant and search the premises." Davidson's smile carries no warmth whatsoever. "Mr. Reynolds, I think there may be some confusion here. Rachel Blackwood is wanted in connection with the theft of classified technology and potential espionage activities. Helping her could be construed as aiding and abetting a federal fugitive." "Then you won't mind showing me the proper paperwork," Michael says, noting how both men's hands have moved fractionally closer to their weapons. "I'm former military, Agent Davidson. I understand the importance of following proper procedures." The tension ratchets up another notch as Davidson realizes he's dealing with someone who won't be intimidated by badges and authority. "Mr. Reynolds, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Ms. Blackwood is a dangerous individual who has already killed 2 people in her escape from Seattle. Every moment you delay increases the risks to yourself and your family." Michael's expression doesn't change, but something deadly stirs behind his eyes. The mention of his family has just escalated this from a law enforcement matter to a personal threat, and these men have no idea what they've just awakened. "Agent Davidson," Michael says, his voice carrying the quiet menace of a man who has killed professionally and will do so again if necessary. "I'm going to give you one chance to produce proper identification and legal authorization for this search. If you can't do that, I'm going to ask you to leave my property." Chen's hand moves visibly toward his weapon, and Michael knows the talking phase is about to end. But before anyone can draw, a new voice cuts through the tension like a blade. "That won't be necessary, gentlemen." Rachel appears in the doorway behind Michael, her bearing transformed from frightened fugitive to corporate executive in command. She's cleaned the blood from her face and somehow managed to project the kind of authority that built a technology empire from nothing. "Ms. Blackwood," Davidson says, relief evident in his voice. "Finally, you've led us on quite a chase." "I'm sure I have," Rachel replies coolly. "And I assume you have proper arrest warrants and extradition paperwork? Because as I recall, crossing state lines in pursuit of a suspect requires very specific legal authorizations." Davidson's confidence falters slightly. "Ma'am, this is a matter of national security. I'm sure you understand that certain protocols can be expedited when American lives are at stake." "Of course," Rachel says with a smile that would make corporate lawyers nervous. "And I'm sure you understand that as a CEO of a major technology company, I have certain rights that can't be expedited even in matters of national security. Starting with the right to see your credentials." Michael watches this exchange with growing admiration for Rachel's tactical intelligence. She's not surrendering or running. She's forcing these men to either produce legitimate authority or reveal themselves as something other than federal agents. Davidson reaches into his jacket, but instead of credentials, his hand emerges with a pistol. The facade of law enforcement drops away completely as both men draw weapons with the fluid precision of professional killers. "I'm afraid this conversation is over," Davidson says, his voice now carrying the cold efficiency of someone for whom violence is simply another business tool. "Mrs. Blackwood, you're coming with us. Mr. Reynolds, you and your family will remain here and forget this conversation ever happened." Michael's combat reflexes engage before his conscious mind processes the threat. He tackles Rachel sideways as the first shot rings out, both of them hitting the floor as bullets splinter the doorframe where they'd been standing. "Sophie, Sarah, Protocol Diamond," Michael shouts, using the code word that sends his daughters to their predetermined hiding place in the root cellar beneath the kitchen floor. He rolls behind the heavy oak table that has served the Reynolds family for 4 generations, pulling Rachel with him as more gunfire erupts. "How many?" Rachel gasps, showing remarkable composure for someone who's never been in actual combat. "At least 4, probably 6, Michael replies, his mind automatically cataloging the sound signatures of different weapons. Professional-grade equipment, coordinated fire patterns. These aren't federal agents, Rachel. These are private military contractors." Outside, he can hear movement as the assault team positions itself for a coordinated breach. Windows will be their primary entry points, with at least one team maintaining overwatch on potential escape routes. Standard operating procedure for hostage rescue, except in this case the hostages are the targets. Michael low crawls to his gun safe, retrieving additional ammunition in a tactical vest while staying below the window line. "Rachel, can you use a weapon?" "I've had training," she says, accepting the pistol he slides across the floor to her. "Corporate security insisted after some threats a few years ago." "Good. The girls are safe in the cellar, but we need to keep these people away from that area of the house. Whatever happens, do not let them get past the kitchen." A smoke grenade crashes through the living room window, followed immediately by another through the dining room. Professional tactics designed to create confusion and limit visibility while the assault team moves into position. Michael knows he has perhaps 30 seconds before the real attack begins. 30 seconds to transform from peaceful rancher to lethal operator, to access skills he's kept buried for 5 years, to become once again the man who earned 3 Bronze Stars and a reputation as one of the most effective soldiers of his generation. "Rachel," he says, his voice carrying absolute calm despite the chaos erupting around them. "Whatever happens next, remember that my daughters are the most important thing in this room. If I go down, get them out of here and don't look back." "Michael, I promise me." She meets his eyes and sees in them the unwavering resolve of a man who has made peace with whatever price he might have to pay. "I promise." The first assault team hits the front door with a battering ram, just as the second team crashes through the rear kitchen window. Michael rises from cover like an avenging angel, his tactical training overriding 5 years of peaceful domesticity as he engages multiple targets with the deadly precision that made him a legend in Afghanistan. The battle for the Reynolds farmhouse has begun, and Michael Reynolds intends to make sure that anyone threatening his family learns why some men are more dangerous when cornered than when attacking. But even as his finger finds the trigger and muscle memory takes over, a small part of his mind wonders if he's fighting to protect his daughters from these intruders, or if he's actually protecting them from the much darker forces that sent Rachel Blackwood crashing into their lives. The answer to that question will determine whether any of them survive the next 10 minutes. The first intruder through the kitchen window never sees the shot that kills him. Michael's training takes over completely. 20 years of combat experience compressed into 3 seconds of lethal efficiency. The man drops silently to the kitchen floor, his weapon clattering across the tiles as his partner realizes they've walked into a kill zone manned by someone far more dangerous than their intelligence suggested. Smoke fills the house now, acrid and choking, but Michael moves through it like a ghost. He knows every inch of this house, every creaking board and hidden corner, while his attackers stumble through unfamiliar territory filled with furniture that becomes obstacles and doorways that funnel them into predetermined fields of fire. Rachel presses herself against the kitchen island, weapon ready, her corporate training warring with primal terror as bullets splinter wood and shatter glass around her. She can hear Michael moving with deadly purpose through the smoke, each shot precisely placed, each movement calculated to maximum effect. Status! A voice crackles through radio static from somewhere in the living room. Professional military communication that confirms Michael's assessment of their opponents. Davidson's down, comes the terse reply. Target has military training. Request immediate backup. Michael appears beside Rachel like a phantom materializing from smoke. 4 down, at least 2 still active, he reports with clinical detachment. Blood streaks his left arm where shrapnel from a near miss has opened a shallow cut, but his hands remain steady on his weapon. The girls? Rachel whispers. Safe. The cellar entrance is hidden behind a false panel. These people don't know the house layout well enough to find it quickly. Michael's eyes never stop moving, constantly scanning for threats. But they'll call for reinforcements. We have maybe 10 minutes before this place is surrounded. A new sound cuts through the chaos outside. Helicopter rotors approaching fast and low. Not rescue, but additional assault forces. And Michael knows with sick certainty that whoever sent these people has resources far beyond ordinary corporate security. Rachel, who exactly did you steal from? He asks while reloading with practiced efficiency. I didn't steal anything, she replies, checking her own weapon with movements that speak of more training than she initially admitted. I discovered that my company was selling our security protocols to foreign intelligence services. Real-time access to government communications, military planning networks, intelligence databases, everything. Michael's blood runs cold as the implications hit him. You're not running from corporate espionage. You're running from treason. Treason that goes all the way to the FBI's counterintelligence division, Rachel confirms, including Deputy Director James Morrison, who's been orchestrating the entire operation for the past 3 years. The name hits Michael like a physical blow. James Morrison, his cousin, a man he hasn't spoken to in 20 years, not since that incident in the Balkans that destroyed any respect Michael had for government bureaucrats who valued political advancement over moral integrity. Morrison, Michael repeats, pieces of a larger puzzle suddenly snapping into place. That explains how they found you so quickly. He has access to every surveillance system in the country. The helicopter settles into the field behind the house, its rotors whipping the smoke into swirling patterns that provide temporary concealment. Michael knows they have perhaps 3 minutes before a full tactical team deploys and makes their current position untenable. We're leaving, and he announces, moving toward the hidden panel that conceals the cellar entrance. There's a tunnel that leads to the old mine shaft about 200 yards from the house. My great-grandfather built it during Prohibition. Rachel follows him through the smoke-filled kitchen, stepping carefully over the body of the man Michael killed. Up close, she can see he's wearing military-grade tactical gear and carrying weapons that cost more than most people make in a year. These aren't ordinary mercenaries, but elite operators with serious backing. Michael triggers the hidden mechanism, and a section of kitchen flooring swings open to reveal wooden stairs descending into darkness. Sophie! Sarah! Time to go on an adventure! 2 small faces appear in the lamplight below, their expressions calm despite the chaos above. Michael has trained them well, and they trust their father completely. Daddy, are we playing the hiding game? Sophie asks as Michael lifts her from the cellar. The very best version, he confirms, gathering both daughters close. Rachel's going to help us get to the special place Uncle Jack showed you last summer. Jack Murdoch, Michael's former teammate and closest friend, had insisted on creating multiple escape routes around the property after Michael's discharge. Just because you're out of the war doesn't mean the war is out of you, Jack had said. Now that paranoid preparation might save their lives. They descend into the tunnel just as explosive charges detonate above them. The assault team is breaching the house with military precision, using controlled demolitions to create multiple entry points while eliminating potential defensive positions. The tunnel is cramped and dark, carved from living rock by hands that understood the value of hidden passages. Michael leads with tactical flashlight. Rachel follows with the girls, and behind them the farmhouse that has sheltered 4 generations of Reynolds men burns with the methodical thoroughness of professionals who leave no evidence behind. How far? Rachel asks, carrying Sarah while Sophie keeps pace beside her father. 1/4 mile through the mountain, then we surface near the old mining equipment, Michael replies. Jack has supplies cached there, including transportation. They move through the tunnel in single file, the sounds of destruction growing fainter behind them. But Michael knows their escape is temporary at best. Morrison has access to satellite surveillance, thermal imaging, and unlimited personnel. They can't simply run and hide. They need to go on the offensive. Rachel, your evidence against Morrison. Where is it? Safety deposit box in Denver, she replies without hesitation. Everything's there. Financial records, communication intercepts, technical specifications of what was sold and to whom, enough to bring down the entire network. Then that's where we're going, Michael decided. But first we need help. They emerge from the tunnel into the fading daylight of early evening. The old mining site provides excellent concealment, with rusted equipment and abandoned buildings offering multiple hiding places and defensive positions. Jack's cache is exactly where it should be, hidden beneath a camouflage tarp that blends seamlessly with the surrounding debris. Military rations, medical supplies, communications equipment, weapons, and most importantly, a vehicle that can't be traced through normal channels. Uncle Jack thinks of everything, Sophie observes as Michael checks the modified pickup truck that looks like a rusted relic but runs with mechanical perfection. Uncle Jack is very smart, Michael agrees, though his expression darkens as he considers what their current situation means for his old friend. If Morrison is willing to attack a family to recover Rachel, no one connected to Michael will be safe. He activates a encrypted satellite phone and dials a number he hasn't used in 3 years. Jack answers on the first ring. Mike, what's wrong? My place just got hit by a professional team. We're mobile, but they'll be tracking everything. Morrison's involved. A pause that speaks volumes about Jack's tactical assessment of their situation. James Morrison? Your cousin? The same. Rachel Blackwood has evidence of a foreign intelligence operation he's been running. They want her dead, and they don't care who else gets hurt in the process. Where are you heading? Denver to retrieve the evidence. But Jack, they know about you now. You need to disappear. Already moving. I'll contact Elena, get her somewhere safe too. Elena, Jack's sister, is a nurse in Colorado Springs. Another innocent person who will have to abandon her life because of proximity to Michael Reynolds. This is my fault, Rachel says quietly, listening to Michael arrange emergency protocols for people she's never met. I've destroyed so many lives already. Sophie looks up at her with the direct gaze children use when adults are being foolish. Daddy says it's not your fault when bad people do bad things. It's only your fault if you don't try to stop them. From the mouth of a 6-year-old comes wisdom that corporate boardrooms and government agencies seem incapable of grasping. Rachel kneels beside Sophie, overwhelmed by the simple clarity of childhood morality. Your daddy is very wise, she says softly. He's the bravest person in the whole world. Sarah adds with complete conviction. He saves people. That's his job. Michael returns from his call with Jack, his expression grim but determined. We have a problem. Morrison has put out a federal manhunt for all of us. Rachel is wanted for espionage and murder. I'm wanted for aiding and abetting a terrorist. Murder? Rachel's voice cracks with shock. 2 federal agents were found dead in Seattle, supposedly killed during your escape. Convenient timing that gives Morrison legal justification for any level of force necessary to recapture you. The frame job is professional and thorough, creating a narrative that transforms Rachel from whistleblower to dangerous fugitive, while giving Morrison's forces carte blanche to use lethal force. It's exactly the kind of bureaucratic manipulation that made Michael leave the military in disgust. We can't trust anyone in law enforcement, Michael continues, but Jack has a contact in the Inspector General's office, someone who's been investigating corruption in counterintelligence operations. Anna Kelly, Rachel says immediately. I've heard of her. Former military prosecutor, completely incorruptible. If anyone can be trusted with this evidence, it's her. Michael nods, his tactical mind already formulating their next moves. Jack will arrange a meeting, but it has to be on our terms. Denver is crawling with federal agents looking for us. As they prepare to leave the mining site, Sarah tugs on Rachel's sleeve. Are you going to stay with us forever? She asks with the hopeful directness only children possess. The question hits Rachel harder than any physical blow. These children, this man, this family that has embraced her despite the danger she brings, they represent everything she thought she'd lost when her world collapsed. The possibility of belonging somewhere, of being part of something worth protecting. I don't know, sweetheart, she answers honestly. That depends on whether we can stop the bad people. We will, Sophie declares with absolute confidence. Daddy always stops the bad people. Michael lifts both girls into the truck, his expression revealing nothing of the doubts that plague any professional warrior facing overwhelming odds. But Rachel sees the truth in his eyes. He's not fighting to win anymore. He's fighting to buy time for his daughters to escape, even if it costs him everything. The drive to Denver takes them through back roads and small towns where federal roadblocks are less likely, but local law enforcement might recognize their faces from the manhunt bulletins. Michael drives with the careful precision of someone who understands that one traffic stop could end everything. Rachel sits beside him, watching the Montana landscape roll past in the gathering darkness. She's never felt more alive or more terrified. The corporate world she dominated for 15 years seems like a distant dream compared to the immediate reality of survival, of protecting the children sleeping in the back seat, of working alongside a man whose quiet competence makes everything seem possible. Tell me about Thomas, Michael says quietly, referring to her brother for the first time since learning their connection. He was everything you'd expect from a Blackwood, Rachel replies, her voice soft with memory. Brilliant, stubborn, absolutely convinced he could save the world through technology and determination. When he joined the Army, I thought he was wasting his talents. I never understood what he found in military service. And now, Rachel looks at the man beside her, at the children he's risking everything to protect, at the absolute moral clarity that guides every decision he makes. And now I understand completely. He found people worth dying for, people who would die for him. He found family. Michael nods, understanding the deeper truth behind her words. Thomas saved my life in Afghanistan. Not just the physical rescue, but what came after. He helped me understand that the mission isn't about politics or policies. It's about the person next to you. He spoke about you often in his letters, Rachel continues. Said you were the most honorable man he had ever known. I used to think that was soldier talk, exaggerated hero worship, but I was wrong. Your brother was the hero, Michael corrects gently. I just did my job. Your job is protecting people. That's what you do, who you are. And right now you're protecting us even though it could cost you everything. How is that not heroic? Michael doesn't answer immediately, his attention focused on the road ahead where distant headlights might represent safety or deadly pursuit. When he finally speaks, his voice carries the weight of hard-earned wisdom. A hero is someone who makes the choice to act when everyone else is paralyzed by fear or uncertainty. You made that choice when you discovered the conspiracy. You could have stayed silent, protected yourself, lived with the knowledge that people were dying because of technology you helped create. Instead, you chose to fight back, even knowing what it would cost you. I chose to run away, Rachel corrects bitterly. You chose to preserve the evidence and stay alive long enough to expose the truth. That's not running away. That's tactical withdrawal in preparation for counterattack. The military terminology makes Rachel smile despite their circumstances. Is that what this is? A counterattack? Tomorrow we retrieve your evidence and get it to Anna Kelly. We expose Morrison and his network, regardless of how far up the conspiracy reaches. We make sure Thomas didn't die for nothing. And we give my daughters a world where honorable people aren't hunted by their own government. The simple statement carries the force of an oath, and Rachel realizes she's witnessing something rare and powerful. Michael Reynolds has just committed himself completely to their cause, not because he believes they can win, but because winning is less important than fighting for what's right. As Denver's lights appear on the horizon, Rachel makes her own silent commitment. She spent 15 years building a technology empire, learning how to navigate corporate warfare, understanding how to leverage resources and relationships to achieve impossible goals. Now she'll use every skill she possesses not to build wealth or market share, but to protect the man and children who have given her something more valuable than money. They've given her a reason to fight that goes beyond personal survival. They've given her a family worth dying for. The truck rolls through the night toward Denver, and the evidence that will either save them all or destroy them completely. But Rachel Blackwood is no longer running away from her enemies. She's preparing to destroy them. They reach the service road as dawn breaks over the Montana horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson that remind Rachel of the corporate boardrooms where she once wielded power. Now, crouched in a roadside ditch with two 6-year-olds and a man whose hands still smell of gunpowder, those days seem like someone else's life entirely. Michael's contact in Billings arrives exactly on schedule, driving a nondescript sedan that could belong to any traveling salesman or insurance adjuster. The man behind the wheel is in his 50s, with the weathered face of someone who has spent decades in professions that require discretion and reliability. Tom Carson, he introduces himself simply, his eyes taking in their disheveled appearance without comment or judgment. Rachel called in a favor. I don't ask questions, and I don't remember faces. Appreciate it, Michael replies, helping the girls into the back seat while maintaining situational awareness of their surroundings. His trust in Rachel's judgment is absolute, but his training demands constant vigilance, regardless of circumstances. The drive to Denver takes them through back roads and small towns where federal roadblocks are less likely, but local law enforcement might still pose a threat. Carson proves to be a professional, varying their route unpredictably while maintaining careful observation of traffic patterns that might indicate surveillance. So what's the real story? Carson asks after they have been driving for an hour, his tone suggesting genuine curiosity rather than mere small talk. Rachel exchanges glances with Michael before answering. Corporate espionage that became something much bigger. People with government connections trying to silence whistleblowers. Government people, Carson repeats with the weary cynicism of someone who has operated in gray areas long enough to understand how power really works. Federal or local? Federal, Michael confirms, high level, with access to resources that make this more than just a law enforcement matter. Carson nods, processing this information with the calm assessment of a professional who has survived by understanding the difference between acceptable risks and suicide missions. In that case, we modify the plan. Denver's going to be hot, crawling with people looking for your faces. You'll need a different approach than walking into a bank like normal customers. What do you suggest? Rachel asks, recognizing the voice of experience in Carson's tactical assessment. I know someone who specializes in discrete banking transactions. Former intelligence community, now freelance. She can access your safety deposit box without triggering the surveillance protocols they have undoubtedly activated. Michael's expression tightens. How much do you trust this person? With my life, Carson replies immediately. Margaret Stone, 20 years CIA, burned by budget cuts and political reorganization. She has every reason to distrust federal authority and no love for the current administration. And if she decides we're worth more dead than alive, Michael's suspicion is professional rather than personal, the automatic paranoia of someone who has learned that betrayal often comes from unexpected sources. Carson's smile carries no humor. Margaret lost 2 operatives to a leak from FBI counterintelligence 3 years ago. If she learns that Deputy Director Morrison is involved in selling intelligence to foreign powers, she'll help you for free just for the chance to watch him burn. The coincidence is too perfect, too convenient, and Michael's instincts scream warnings about operations that unfold with suspicious ease. But Rachel places a hand on his arm, her touch conveying understanding and agreement with his concerns. It's not a coincidence, she says quietly. Morrison's corruption has been creating enemies for years. We're not the first people to discover his activities, just the first with enough evidence to prove them. Or the first desperate enough to treat, Michael corrects grimly. They reach the outskirts of Denver as afternoon shadows begin to lengthen, the city's skyline rising before them like a monument to legitimate commerce and honest enterprise. But Rachel knows that appearance is deceptive, that behind those gleaming towers, fortunes are built on secrets that would destroy governments if exposed. Carson guides them to a small office building in an industrial district where surveillance is minimal and foot traffic consists mainly of blue-collar workers focused on their own business rather than strangers' faces. Margaret Stone's operation occupies a suite on the 3rd floor behind a door marked Mountain States Insurance Consultants. The woman who guides them defies every stereotype of former intelligence operatives. She's in her late 40s, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and clothing that suggests middle management rather than covert operations. But her eyes hold the cold assessment of someone who has killed professionally and will do so again if circumstances require. Tom's explained your situation, she says without preamble, gesturing them into an office that combines the appearance of a legitimate business with security measures that would impress a paranoid dictator. Federal manhunt, corrupt counterintelligence officials, evidence of foreign intelligence penetration. Quite a story. It's not a story, Rachel replies with the authority of someone accustomed to skeptical audiences. It's documentation of the largest intelligence breach since Aldrich Ames. Margaret's expression sharpens with professional interest on, "Show me." Rachel produces the account numbers and access codes for her Denver safety deposit box, along with a detailed inventory of the evidence she's accumulated over 3 years of careful investigation. Margaret reviews the documentation with the systematic thoroughness of an analyst who understands that details matter when lives are at stake. This is legitimate, she concludes after 20 minutes of examination. And if even half of it proves accurate, James Morrison isn't just corrupt. He's committed treason on a scale that compromises decades of intelligence operations. Can you access the material? Michael asks, his patience with analysis reaching its limit as tactical concerns reassert themselves. I can, but not immediately. First National has upgraded their security protocols since the last time I accessed their systems. It'll take 12 hours to create the electronic credentials and security bypasses necessary for undetected entry. 12 hours. Michael's mind automatically calculates the implications. 12 hours for Morrison's forces to tighten their search perimeter, activate additional assets, and potentially discover their location through surveillance or informants. We don't have 12 hours, he says flatly. Morrison has unlimited federal resources. Every hour we delay increases the probability of discovery and capture. Margaret's smile suggests she's anticipated this objection. Then we don't wait. We go in tonight, during the evening shift change when security protocols are most vulnerable. Higher risk, but much faster execution. What kind of higher risk, Rachel asks, recognizing the tone of someone proposing a course of action that crosses legal and ethical boundaries. The kind that involves bypassing multiple federal crime statutes and accepting that if we're caught, official denial will be absolute and comprehensive. Margaret replies with clinical honesty. Tom didn't exaggerate about my relationship with current federal authority. I'm already a person of interest in several ongoing investigations. Adding bank infiltration to my list of alleged crimes won't materially change my situation. Sophie tugs on Michael's sleeve, her small face serious with the gravity of adult conversation she doesn't fully understand but senses is important. Daddy, is the lady going to help us stop the bad people? Michael kneels beside his daughter, his voice gentle despite the tension coiling through every muscle in his body. She's going to try, sweetheart. Sometimes stopping bad people requires good people to take risks. Like when you saved Uncle Thomas, Sarah adds, referring to Rachel's brother with the easy acceptance children show for information that connects important adults in their lives. Exactly like that, Michael confirms, meeting Margaret's eyes over his daughter's heads. Sometimes we have to trust people we've just met because the alternative is letting evil win. Margaret's expression softens fractionally as she observes the interaction between father and daughters. I had a family once, she says quietly. Lost them to the same kind of people you're fighting now. Officials who put political advancement ahead of human lives, who sacrifice operatives to protect their own positions. The personal revelation transforms their transaction from business arrangement to shared mission, from professional cooperation to something approaching family alliance. Margaret Stone isn't just accessing Rachel's evidence for money or excitement. She's seeking the justice that was denied when her own loved ones became acceptable casualties in Morrison's rise to power. What do you need from us? Rachel asks, recognizing the moment when negotiation becomes commitment. Complete trust and absolute silence. Margaret replies, already moving toward equipment that Rachel recognizes as far more sophisticated than anything required for insurance consulting. What I'm about to show you doesn't officially exist, and the techniques I'll use tonight violate approximately 17 federal statutes. She activates a bank of monitors that display real-time surveillance feeds from locations throughout Denver, including First National Bank. The quality and coverage suggest access to government-grade systems that should be impossible for a private citizen to obtain. Courtesy of friends who share my opinion of current federal leadership, Margaret explains, noting Rachel's surprised recognition of the technology. The intelligence community is smaller than most people realize, and loyalty flows to people rather than institutions when those institutions become corrupt. Michael studies the surveillance feeds with professional appreciation, noting security camera positions, guard rotations, and electronic countermeasures that would challenge even experienced operators. Timeline for infiltration? 11 p.m. during the evening security shift change. Minimal personnel, maximum confusion, optimal window for undetected entry and exit. Margaret's planning is meticulous, accounting for variables that would escape civilian notice but could prove fatal if overlooked. And if something goes wrong? Michael's question addresses the reality that no operation survives contact with unexpected circumstances. Then we improvise, adapt, and overcome, Margaret replies with the automatic response of someone who has faced impossible odds and survived through flexibility rather than rigid adherence to predetermined plans. But nothing will go wrong because failure isn't an option when children's lives are at stake. The hours until evening pass with careful preparation that transforms Margaret's office into a military-style operations center. Equipment is tested, backup plans are developed, and contingencies are established for scenarios ranging from simple security delays to full-scale law enforcement response. Rachel watches Michael interact with Margaret and realizes she's witnessing something rare and powerful. Professionals who understand each other completely despite having met only hours before. Their communication requires few words because their shared experience with high-stakes operations creates instant comprehension of needs, capabilities, and limitations. Your former special operations, Margaret observes as they review building schematics for the bank. Fifth group, probably Afghanistan theater, definitely someone who's conducted sensitive site exploitation under hostile conditions. Something like that, Michael confirms without providing details that could compromise ongoing classified operations or endanger former teammates. Good. Then you understand that tonight's mission requires surgical precision rather than overwhelming force. We get in, access the target materials, and disappear before anyone realizes we were there. And if we encounter unexpected resistance? Margaret's smile would frighten reasonable people. Then we remind them why former intelligence operatives are more dangerous when betrayed than when loyal. As evening approaches, Sophie and Sarah settle into a corner of the office with coloring books and quiet games, their presence a constant reminder of what's truly at stake in the night's operation. They're not just retrieving evidence to expose corruption. They're fighting for the right of innocent children to grow up in a world where justice matters more than political expediency. Rachel, Michael says quietly as final preparations near completion, whatever happens tonight, I want you to know something. She looks up from the communications equipment she's been testing, noting the gravity in his expression that suggests words he's been carefully considering. Finding you by that fence wasn't an accident, he continues. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was your brother watching out for both of us. But it wasn't coincidence. You were meant to be here, meant to be part of this family, meant to help us fight this fight. The simple declaration hits Rachel harder than any romantic gesture could, because it represents acceptance not just as a woman he's attracted to, but as a warrior he trusts with everything that matters to him. In the corporate world, respect was measured in stock prices and market share. Here, it's measured in the willingness to trust someone with your children's lives. Michael, she begins, but he holds up a hand to stop her response. You don't have to say anything now. Just know that whatever happens tonight, you're not alone anymore. You have a family that will fight for you the same way you're fighting for us. The weight of belonging settles around Rachel like armor, protection against the fear and uncertainty that have defined her existence since discovering Morrison's conspiracy. For the first time in 3 years, she's not calculating exit strategies or preparing for betrayal. She's planning for victory alongside people who have proven their loyalty through action rather than words. Margaret checks her watch and nods toward the equipment array that will coordinate their infiltration. Time to move. Remember, we have one chance to get this right. After tonight, Morrison will know we have the evidence, and he'll deploy every resource at his disposal to prevent us from using it. They gather their gear with the efficient movements of professionals preparing for combat, each person understanding their role in an operation that will either expose one of the largest intelligence scandals in American history or result in their capture by forces that operate outside legal constraints. But as they prepare to leave for the bank, Rachel realizes she's no longer afraid of what might happen if they fail. She's excited about what will happen when they succeed, about the family that will emerge stronger from tonight's trial, about the justice that will finally be served for Thomas and everyone else Morrison has destroyed in his climb to power. The night ahead holds danger, uncertainty, and the possibility of capture or death. But it also holds this promise of truth, the prospect of justice, and the chance to prove that some Americans still believe honor matters more than survival. The First National Bank of Denver stands like a fortress against the night sky, its neoclassical columns and granite facades speaking of stability and trust that Rachel now knows is an illusion. Security cameras sweep the surrounding streets with mechanical precision, while motion sensors monitor every approach to the building's multiple entrances. Margaret Stone studies the target through high-powered optics from their concealed position 3 blocks away. Her movements economical and precise as she identifies patrol patterns and electronic countermeasures that have been upgraded since her last reconnaissance. They've added thermal imaging to the perimeter systems, she reports quietly into her headset. Morrison's people have been busy. This isn't standard bank security anymore. It's counterintelligence-grade protection. Michael adjusts his own surveillance equipment, noting the subtle modifications that transform routine security into something approaching military-grade protection. How does that change our approach? It doesn't, Margaret replies with the calm certainty of someone who has overcome worse obstacles with fewer resources. It just means we use different techniques, less elegant, more direct, but equally effective. Rachel monitors communications traffic through encrypted channels that Margaret has provided, her corporate experience with technology proving invaluable as she tracks federal law enforcement frequencies for any indication their presence has been detected. Multiple agencies are coordinating search efforts, she reports, noting the systematic efficiency of the manhunt Morrison has orchestrated. FBI, DEA, ATF, and what appears to be a specialized task force with no official designation. Morrison's private army, Michael concludes grimly. Contractors with government credentials and unlimited operational authority, the kind of people who make problems disappear permanently. Sophie and Sarah remain in the observation vehicle with Tom Carson, their small faces pressed against tinted windows as they watch their father prepare for what they understand is important but dangerous work. Their trust remains absolute despite the circumstances that have transformed their world from peaceful Montana ranch to urban warfare zone. Daddy's going to stop the bad people, Sophie announces with complete confidence, her faith in her father's capabilities unshaken by evidence of the forces arrayed against them. And Miss Rachel's going to help him, Sarah adds, her shy nature overcome by excitement at being part of an adventure that will be worth remembering when they're grown. Carson checks his own equipment, communications gear, and emergency extraction protocols that will activate if the infiltration team fails to return within predetermined time limits. His role is simple but crucial: protect the children and ensure their survival regardless of what happens to the adults. Infiltration commences in 60 seconds, Margaret announces, her voice carrying the controlled tension of someone who has led similar operations under worse conditions. Remember, this is a surgical strike. We get in, access the target materials, and extract before anyone realizes we've been there. Michael performs final equipment checks with movements so automatic they seem unconscious. Weapons, communications, medical supplies, and most importantly, the specialized tools necessary for accessing a safety deposit box protected by multiple security systems. Rachel, you understand your role in the operation? She nods, her corporate background providing unexpected advantages for an infiltration that requires understanding of financial institutions and electronic security systems. I guide you to the correct box, provide access credentials, and coordinate with Margaret for technical bypass of enhanced security measures. And if we encounter unexpected resistance, follow your lead, maintain communications discipline, And remember that getting the evidence out matters more than any individual survival. Her answer carries the conviction of someone who has accepted that some missions require sacrifice for the greater good. Margaret initiates final communications checks, her voice connecting them to support networks that span the intelligence community's shadow world of former operatives who maintain loyalty to principles rather than institutions. Overwatch confirms target building is clear of additional security assets, comes the report from an unseen observer. Standard complement of 3 guards, 2 roving, verkeering, 1 fixed position at main security station. Electronic countermeasures are active and ready for deployment, adds another voice from their technical support team. We can provide 15 minutes of clean infiltration before backup systems require alternative approaches. The countdown reaches 0, and they move with the synchronized precision of professionals who understand that success depends on perfect coordination rather than individual heroics. Margaret leads through approaches that avoid camera coverage, while Michael provides security at Overwatch, and Rachel maintains communications with their support network. The bank's rear entrance yields to Margaret's electronic expertise with surprising ease, sophisticated locks surrendering to techniques that blur the line between advanced tradecraft and criminal enterprise. But as they penetrate deeper into the building, Rachel realizes this infiltration is proceeding too smoothly for an operation targeting assets protected by federal-grade security. "Something's wrong," she whispers into her microphone, corporate instincts warning her of scenarios that appear successful while concealing deadly traps. This level of access shouldn't be possible if Morrison has really upgraded their security protocols. Michael freezes in the corridor leading to the vault area, his combat experience recognizing the same wrongness that has triggered Rachel's suspicions. "Margaret, status on external surveillance. Any indication we've been detected?" "Negative," comes the immediate response. "All security systems show normal parameters. No alerts, no backup response, no indication of compromise." But Rachel's unease continues to grow as they approach the vault that contains evidence capable of destroying one of the most powerful men in American intelligence. In her experience, operations that proceeded without obstacles usually ended with catastrophic surprises that claimed lives and destroyed carefully laid plans. "We continue the mission," Michael decides after rapid tactical assessment, "but we maintain heightened alert status and prepare for immediate extraction if circumstances change." The vault access requires coordination between Margaret's technical skills and Rachel's legitimate credentials, a combination of electronic bypass and authorized entry that should leave no trace of unauthorized access. But as the massive steel door swings open to reveal rows of safety deposit boxes, Rachel's corporate paranoia reaches critical levels. "Michael, this is too easy," she insists, her voice carrying the authority of someone who has survived corporate warfare by recognizing when competitors are leading her into carefully prepared traps. "Morrison has had days to prepare for exactly this scenario. He knows I would try to retrieve this evidence." "Then why isn't he here?" Michael asks, though his own instincts are screaming warnings about operations that succeed despite overwhelming enemy advantages. "Because he doesn't need to be here," Rachel realizes with growing horror. "He's not trying to stop us from getting the evidence. He's trying to discredit it." The implications hit them simultaneously as they recognize the sophisticated nature of Morrison's trap. He's allowing them to retrieve the evidence because he's prepared countermeasures that will make their proof appear falsified. Their documentation seem like elaborate forgeries created by desperate fugitives. "We abort," Michael announces immediately, his tactical training overriding mission objectives when survival becomes the primary concern. "Margaret, initiate emergency extraction protocols. We're walking into a setup designed to destroy our credibility along with our lives." But even as he issues the abort command, new voices crackle through their communication system. Voices that don't belong to their support network and carry the crisp authority of federal law enforcement. "Attention infiltration team. This is Special Agent Williams, FBI Denver Field Office. You are surrounded by federal agents and have no avenue of escape. Surrender immediately and no harm will come to the children waiting in your vehicle." The mention of Sophie and Sarah transforms tactical retreat into desperate fight for survival as Michael realizes Morrison has orchestrated not just their capture, but a scenario where his daughters become leverage for their surrender. The children they've risked everything to protect are now hostages in a game where Morrison holds every advantage. Carson, status on package security. Michael radios urgently, using code phrases that identify the girls without providing additional intelligence to hostile listeners. Static answers him, then a voice he doesn't recognize speaking with mock concern. Mr. Reynolds, your friend Mr. Carson is temporarily unavailable. However, your daughters are safe and will remain so as long as you cooperate fully with federal authority. Rachel watches Michael's face transform as the reality of their situation becomes clear. They've been outmaneuvered by an opponent who understands that threatening children will neutralize even the most dangerous adversary, reducing elite operators to desperate parents willing to sacrifice everything for their offspring's safety. What do you want? Michael asks, his voice steady despite the rage building behind his carefully controlled expression. Immediate surrender, full cooperation with debriefing procedures, an acknowledgement that the evidence you sought to retrieve has been legally seized as material relevant to an ongoing counterintelligence investigation, comes the response from someone who clearly speaks for Morrison's interests. And if we refuse, then your daughters will be placed in protective custody while you and Ms. Blackwood are prosecuted for espionage, bank robbery, and conspiracy against the United States. They'll grow up believing their father was a traitor who died in federal prison. The psychological warfare is perfectly calculated to exploit every vulnerability Michael possesses, transforming his greatest strength, his love for his daughters, into a weapon that can be used against him. But Rachel sees something in his expression that suggests Morrison has made a critical error in his assessment of Michael Reynolds' character. Margaret, Michael says quietly, his voice carrying deadly calm that speaks of decisions made and accepted. How long do we have before they breach our position? 3 minutes, maybe 4 if they're being cautious about civilian casualties, she replies, recognizing the tone of someone who has chosen combat over surrender regardless of odds or consequences. Rachel, Michael continues, turning to face her with eyes that hold no doubt about the course of action he's selected. In my jacket pocket, there's a USB drive containing backup copies of everything from your safety deposit box. Margaret's people obtained it yesterday using the same techniques we're employing tonight. Rachel stares at him in shock as she realizes the full scope of the operation they have been conducting. You already have the evidence? We've had it for 18 hours, Michael confirms. Tonight was never about retrieving your evidence. It was about creating circumstances where Morrison would reveal the full extent of his network and operational capabilities. You used us as bait, she breathes, understanding flooding through her with devastating clarity. I used myself as bait, Michael corrects gently. You and the girls were supposed to be safely hidden while Margaret and I gathered intelligence on Morrison's response protocols. But you insisted on being part of the operation, and Sophie and Sarah wouldn't stay behind without you. The truth hits Rachel like a physical blow as she realizes Michael has been conducting a complex counterintelligence operation from the moment she appeared at his fence line. Every decision, every move, every apparent retreat has been designed to draw Morrison into revealing weaknesses that can be exploited. So what happens now, she asks, noting how Margaret has begun preparing equipment for scenarios that extend far beyond simple escape and evasion. Now we spring our own trap, Michael replies, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who has turned apparent defeat into certain victory. Morrison thinks he's captured us, but he's actually walked into a kill zone we've been preparing for 20 years. Margaret activates devices that Rachel recognizes as military-grade jamming equipment, systems designed to disrupt communications and surveillance in preparation for operations that officially never happen. Overwatch, initiate Protocol Lazarus. All federal frequencies are now compromised and should be considered hostile. Lazarus, Rachel asks, recognizing the reference but not understanding its operational significance. Resurrection from apparent death, Michael explains as he checks weapons that somehow appeared in his hands without her noticing their deployment. Morrison thinks he killed us tonight. He's about to learn why it's dangerous to celebrate victory before confirming the body count. The bank's lights cut out suddenly, plunging them into darkness that favors defenders who know the terrain over attackers operating in unfamiliar environment. Emergency lighting activates after several seconds, but the brief period of complete darkness has allowed Michael and Margaret to reposition themselves in defensive positions that transform their apparent trap into an ambush zone. Federal agents, this is your final warning, comes the amplified voice from outside the bank. Surrender immediately or face the consequences of resistance. Michael's response comes not through words, but through actions that demonstrate why special operations forces are feared by enemies and respected by allies. The first federal agent through the vault entrance encounters defensive fire delivered with surgical precision, neutralizing threats while minimizing collateral damage to surrounding property. But even as the firefight develops, Rachel realizes this confrontation serves purposes beyond immediate tactical advantage. Every shot fired, every communication intercepted, every tactical decision made by Morrison's forces provides intelligence that will be used against them in future operations. This isn't about winning tonight, she understands suddenly. This is about gathering evidence for tomorrow. Partly, Michael confirms, while engaging targets with the mechanical precision of someone for whom violence is simply another professional skill. But it's also about sending a message that some lines can't be crossed without consequences. What message? Michael's smile would terrify reasonable people as he demonstrates capabilities that Morrison clearly underestimated. That threatening my daughters was the last mistake he'll ever make. The battle for First National Bank develops into something approaching urban warfare as Morrison's forces discover they're facing opponents who possess training, equipment, and motivation far beyond anything their intelligence had suggested. But Rachel knows this confrontation is only the beginning of a larger campaign that will determine whether justice or corruption ultimately prevails in American intelligence agencies. Outside, sirens wail as legitimate law enforcement responds to reports of gunfire at a major financial institution. Morrison's private wards is about to become public spectacle, forcing him to choose between maintaining operational security and achieving his objectives through overwhelming force. Time to leave, Margaret announces as she monitors communications traffic that indicates approaching reinforcements from multiple agencies. We've gathered what we came for and demonstrated what we needed to demonstrate. They begin extraction procedures that reveal the true sophistication of the operation Michael has been conducting, using routes and methods that suggest months of preparation rather than desperate improvisation. But as they move toward escape, Rachel realizes the most dangerous phase of their mission is just beginning. Morrison now knows they possess not just evidence of his corruption, but the capability to resist his forces on equal terms. He'll respond with escalated tactics designed to eliminate them permanently rather than simply capture them for interrogation. The war between Michael Reynolds and James Morrison has begun in earnest, with the lives of two innocent children hanging in the balance and the future of American intelligence agencies waiting to be determined by the outcome of their personal vendetta. But as they disappear into Denver's urban maze, Rachel Blackwood knows she's no longer a fugitive running from overwhelming forces. She's a warrior preparing for the final battle in a campaign that will either restore honor to American intelligence or complete its transformation into an instrument of tyranny. The choice ultimately will be decided by courage, sacrifice, and the willingness of good people to risk everything for principles that transcend personal survival. The extraction from First National Bank leads them through Denver's underground infrastructure, a network of tunnels and maintenance corridors that Margaret navigates with the confidence of someone who has memorized every city system that might provide tactical advantage. Behind them, the sound of federal response teams grows fainter as they penetrate deeper into the urban maze that will either save them or become their tomb. Status on the children? Michael asked through encrypted communications, his voice maintaining operational calm despite the fury burning behind his eyes at Morrison's use of innocent hostages. Package is secure, comes Carson's voice, steady and professional despite circumstances that would break civilian nerves. Relocated to secondary position using predetermined protocols. Subjects are calm and cooperative. Relief floods through Michael's system, though he maintains the tactical focus necessary for continued survival. Sophie and Sarah are safe, but that safety is temporary until Morrison's network is permanently neutralized through means that extend far beyond simple evidence presentation. Margaret, what's our status on the intelligence gathering phase of tonight's operation? Rachel asks, understanding now that their bank infiltration served multiple purposes beyond evidence retrieval. Complete success, Margaret replies while monitoring communications traffic through devices that intercept and analyze federal law enforcement frequencies. Morrison's response protocols are now fully mapped, his operational capabilities documented, and his personnel identified through voice recognition and tactical signature analysis. They emerge from the tunnel system into a warehouse district where legitimate businesses provide cover for activities that government agencies prefer to conduct away from public scrutiny. Margaret's safe house occupies a building that appears abandoned but contains resources that rival official intelligence installations. "Welcome to the real headquarters of our operation," Margaret announces as they enter a facility equipped with technology that makes her downtown office seem primitive by comparison. "This is where we've been planning Morrison's downfall for the past 2 years." Rachel stares at banks of monitors displaying real-time surveillance of locations throughout Denver and beyond. Communications intercept equipment that captures traffic from multiple federal agencies, and analysis stations where former intelligence operatives work around the clock to map corruption networks within American government. "How many people are involved in this?" she asks, recognizing the scope of an operation that extends far beyond the small team she thought was improvising responses to unexpected circumstances. 47 former intelligence professionals who lost careers, friends, or family members to Morrison's corruption. Margaret explains, while coordinating with analysts who are processing intelligence gathered during tonight's confrontation. "We've been building this capability since the first hints emerged that American intelligence was being sold to foreign powers." Michael studies status boards that track not just Morrison's immediate network, but connections reaching into congressional offices, defense contractors, and international intelligence services. This is more than evidence gathering. This is a shadow intelligence operation designed to restore integrity to agencies that have been compromised from within. "Exactly," Margaret confirms. "Official channels are useless when the corruption reaches levels that make internal investigation impossible. So we created our own channels, our own capabilities, our own methods for achieving justice when the system fails." Rachel recognizes the sophisticated analysis techniques being employed, methods that surpass anything available to normal law enforcement or even most government agencies. "Where did you acquire this level of capability?" "Patriotic intelligence professionals who refuse to watch their life's work perverted by people like Morrison," comes a new voice from across the operations center. "People who understand that loyalty to country sometimes requires disloyalty to corrupt leadership." The speaker is a woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that hold the steady authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affect national security. Her bearing suggests senior intelligence leadership, the kind of person who once briefed presidents and shaped policy at the highest levels. "Rachel Blackwood, meet Director Catherine Hayes," Margaret introduces, former Deputy Director of Central Intelligence, current leader of an organization that doesn't officially exist, but performs functions the official intelligence community can no longer be trusted to handle. Hayes approaches with the measured pace of someone who has survived decades in environments where mistakes prove fatal. "Mr. Blackwood, your brother spoke of you often during his deployment. He said you possess the finest analytical mind he'd ever encountered and the moral courage to use it properly." The mention of Thomas brings tears to Rachel's eyes, but also reinforces her determination to complete the mission he began when he first recognized Morrison's corruption. "Did Thomas know about this organization?" "He was one of our founding members," Hayes confirms. "His intelligence work in Afghanistan uncovered the first evidence that American communications security had been compromised. When he tried to report it through official channels, he discovered the corruption extended to people responsible for investigating such breaches." Michael processes this information with the systematic approach of someone trained to identify patterns and connections that escape civilian notice. Thomas didn't die from burn pit exposure. He was murdered because he got too close to exposing Morrison's network. "Cancer provided convenient cover," Hayes agrees grimly. But yes, Thomas Blackwood was eliminated because his investigation threatened billions of dollars in illegal transactions and the careers of people who consider murder an acceptable business expense. The truth about her brother's death hits Rachel like a physical assault, confirming suspicions she'd harbored but never dared voice. Thomas hadn't died from random environmental hazards, but from deliberate action by people who valued profit over patriotism. Then this isn't just about stopping Morrison, she realizes. This is about justice for Thomas and everyone else he's killed to protect his empire. Justice, yes, Hayes confirms, but also prevention. Morrison's network has grown beyond simple intelligence sharing into something approaching a shadow government that operates outside constitutional oversight. If we don't stop them now, American democracy itself becomes their next casualty. The operations center buzzes with activity as analysts process intelligence gathered during tonight's confrontation, building comprehensive maps of Morrison's organization that reveal connections reaching into every aspect of American power structure. But Rachel notices something troubling in the patterns emerging on their displays. Director Hayes, these connections show Morrison has assets in the Justice Department, the Supreme Court, and senior congressional leadership. How do we expose corruption when the people responsible for prosecution are themselves compromised? Hayes' smile carries no warmth as she considers the question that defines their entire operation. We don't expose it through official channels. We expose it through methods that make official denial impossible and public ignorance untenable. What kind of methods? Michael asks, though his expression suggests he already understands the answer. The kind that former intelligence professionals excel at when motivated by righteous anger and unconstrained by legal limitations. Hayes replies. Morrison has operated outside law for years. Now he discovers what happens when people who respect law are forced to operate outside it as well. Margaret coordinates with technical teams that are preparing for operations far more sophisticated than tonight's bank infiltration, activities that will bring Morrison's crimes into public light through means he cannot control or suppress. Timeline for Phase 2 implementation? 72 hours, Hayes confirms. By then, every major news organization will have documentation that makes Morrison's guilt undeniable, and every foreign intelligence service will know their American assets have been compromised. Rachel watches preparations for what appears to be the largest intelligence operation ever conducted by non-governmental personnel, a coordinated assault on corruption that will either restore American intelligence agencies or destroy them completely. What about collateral damage, she asks, recognizing that operations of this magnitude inevitably affect innocent people who happen to be proximate to primary targets. Minimized but not eliminated, Hayes admits with the honesty of someone who has made hard choices throughout her career. Some careers will be destroyed, some families will be affected, some institutions will require rebuilding. But the alternative is allowing corruption to metastasize until it consumes everything we've sworn to protect. Michael studies tactical displays that show Morrison's forces regrouping after tonight's confrontation, preparing for escalated action that will bring civilian casualties if not carefully managed. Morrison won't surrender quietly. He'll fight with everything he has, regardless of who gets hurt. Which is why we strike first, strike hard, and strike with overwhelming force, Margaret replies, her voice carrying the cold determination of someone who has lost too much to Morrison's corruption to accept anything less than total victory. And the children? Michael asks, his primary concern unchanged despite the scope of operations unfolding around them. Protected by people who understand that some things matter more than operational success, Hayes assures him. Your daughters will be kept safe regardless of what happens to the rest of us. Carson's voice crackles through communication systems as he reports from the secure location where Sophie and Sarah wait for their father's return. Subjects remain calm and confident. They're asking when Daddy will finish stopping the bad people so they can go home. The innocent question cuts through tactical planning and strategic considerations to the heart of what they're really fighting for. The right of children to grow up in a world where good people protect them from evil, where honor matters more than profit, where courage defines character rather than expedience. Tell them soon, Michael replies, his voice carrying promise that transcends simple reassurance. Tell them Daddy is working with friends to make sure bad people can't hurt anyone anymore. As midnight approaches, the pace of preparation intensifies throughout the operations center. Teams deploy to positions across Denver and beyond, carrying equipment and authorization for activities that will either expose the largest intelligence scandal in American history or result in the systematic elimination of everyone involved in tonight's revelations. Rachel finds herself assigned to a communication station where her corporate technology background provides unique advantages for penetrating security systems that protect Morrison's most sensitive operations. But as she works alongside professional intelligence officers, she realizes her role has evolved far beyond simple evidence provider. You're not just helping us expose Morrison, Margaret observes, noting Rachel's growing integration into their operational structure. You're becoming one of us, part of the shadow intelligence community that operates when official agencies fail. Is that what's happening? Rachel asks, though she already knows the answer from her own sense of belonging in an environment defined by commitment to principles rather than personal advancement. Thomas saw it years ago, Hayes confirms from across the operations center. He said you had the analytical skills and moral courage necessary for intelligence work, but corporate success would probably prevent you from ever considering government service. He was right about the corporate success, Rachel admits, but he didn't anticipate Morrison destroying everything I built as collateral damage in his war against people who threaten his empire. Destruction that freed you to discover your true calling, Margaret suggests, with the insight of someone who has watched talented people find their proper place in missions that matter more than money. As operations teams report ready status from positions throughout the region, Rachel realizes she's no longer thinking about returning to her previous life as CEO of a technology company. That world seems distant and unimportant compared to the immediate reality of protecting Michael's daughters and completing Thomas's mission to restore honor to American intelligence. Director Hayes, she says, making a decision that will define the rest of her life. After we finish with Morrison, I'd like to discuss permanent assignment to this organization. Hayes' smile suggests she's been expecting this conversation since Rachel first demonstrated her capabilities. I thought you might. We can always use people who understand that some things are worth fighting for regardless of personal cost. The commitment settles around Rachel like armor, protection against doubts and uncertainties that have plagued her since discovering Morrison's corruption. She's no longer a corporate executive forced into circumstances beyond her control. She's an intelligence officer preparing for the most important mission of her career. Phase 2 commences in 6 hours, Margaret announces as final preparations near completion. All teams report ready for simultaneous execution across multiple target locations. Michael checks equipment that will allow him to participate in operations while maintaining communication with the team protecting his daughters. What's the probability of complete success? High enough to justify the risk, Hayes replies with the clinical assessment of someone who has calculated odds for operations that shaped world history. Morrison's network is extensive but not omnipotent. They can be defeated by people with sufficient motivation and proper planning. And if we fail, then we die knowing we tried to preserve something worth preserving. Margaret answers with the matter-of-fact acceptance of someone who has made peace with mortality in service of principles larger than individual survival. Rachel monitors communications channels that reveal Morrison's forces preparing for their own escalated response. Activities that confirm tonight's confrontation was merely the opening battle in a war that will determine whether American intelligence serves the Constitution or foreign powers. He's activating sleeper assets, she reports, noting communication patterns that indicate coordination with resources hidden throughout government and private sector organizations. This is going to become very ugly very quickly. Good, Michael replies with savage satisfaction. Let him commit everything he has. It makes our job easier when all the targets are visible simultaneously. As dawn approaches over Denver, 2 parallel operations prepare for execution that will either restore integrity to American intelligence or complete its transformation into an instrument of tyranny. The outcome will be determined not by superior resources or political influence, but by the willingness of good people to risk everything for principles that transcend personal survival. But Rachel Blackwood is no longer afraid of what might happen if they fail. She's excited about what will happen when they succeed, about the justice that will finally be served for Thomas and everyone else Morrison has destroyed, about the family that will emerge stronger from this crucible of fire and blood. The war between honor and corruption has reached its decisive phase, and Rachel knows with absolute certainty which side deserves to win. The assault begins at dawn with surgical strikes against 17 targets simultaneously across 3 states. A coordinated operation that demonstrates the true scope of the Shadow Intelligence Network Director Hayes has assembled over 2 years of careful planning. Rachel monitors communications from the operations center as teams move against Morrison's safe houses, financial assets, and communication nodes with the precision of a military campaign. Target Alpha is secure, comes the first report from a team in Washington, D.C. that has penetrated Morrison's primary coordination facility. Documents and electronic assets are being processed for immediate transmission. Target Beta confirms capture of financial records. Follows another voice from Denver, where Morrison's money laundering operation has been completely exposed. Swiss account access codes are in hand. Michael coordinates tactical support from his position overseeing protection of Sophie and Sarah, his daughters safe in a secure facility that rivals anything the federal government could provide. But his attention remains focused on the systematic dismantling of the network that threatened his family. Overwatch confirms Morrison himself is mobile, Margaret reports, tracking the deputy director's movements through surveillance assets that penetrate even classified federal transportation systems. He's heading toward his emergency command center in Colorado Springs. The one near Peterson Air Force Base? Rachel asks, recognizing the location from intelligence assessments they've conducted over the past week. The same, Hayes confirms grimly. Morrison thinks military proximity provides protection from civilian law enforcement. He doesn't realize we have assets throughout the defense establishment who've been waiting years for this opportunity. Rachel studies tactical displays that show Morrison's remaining forces consolidating around positions they believe are defensible, unaware that their communications have been compromised and their plans are known in real time by the people hunting them. He's walking into our final trap, she realizes, seeing how Morrison's retreat follows patterns that will concentrate his remaining assets in locations where they can be captured or eliminated simultaneously. Thomas designed this operational framework before he died, Hayes reveals, her voice carrying respect for Rachel's brother that transcends professional admiration. He understood Morrison's psychology well enough to predict exactly how he would respond when cornered. The mention of Thomas brings fresh determination to Rachel's tactical analysis, knowing that her brother's sacrifice is finally being vindicated through operations that will expose every aspect of Morrison's treason. But as she monitors enemy movements, something in their patterns triggers corporate instincts honed by years of hostile takeover attempts. Director Hayes, something's wrong with Morrison's withdrawal, she announces, noting anomalies that speak of preparation rather than panic. These movements are too coordinated, too precise for a man who's watching his empire collapse in real time. Michael's attention sharpens as he recognizes the tone Rachel uses when her analytical mind identifies threats that others have missed. What are you seeing? Morrison isn't retreating, Rachel concludes with growing certainty. He's consolidating for a counterattack. All this apparent desperation is designed to draw our forces into positions where he can eliminate us with a single massive strike. Hayes reviews the same intelligence with experienced eyes that suddenly see patterns suggesting Rachel's assessment is correct. Son of a bitch. He's planned for this scenario, prepared contingencies that turn our operational success into a trap. What kind of contingencies, Margaret asks, though her expression suggests she already fears the answer. The kind that involve calling in favors from foreign intelligence services who have as much to lose as he does if this conspiracy becomes public. Hayes replies, activating communication systems that connect to assets throughout the intelligence community. Rachel's corporate background with international business provides insight into relationships that pure intelligence professionals might miss. Morrison doesn't just sell information to foreign powers. He's become their primary asset within American intelligence, which means they'll protect him with resources that extend far beyond normal operational support. The implications transform their tactical situation from law enforcement operation to something approaching military conflict as they realize Morrison's counterattack will involve assets from hostile foreign intelligence services operating on American soil. How long before these foreign assets can be deployed, Michael asks, his mind automatically calculating timelines and force ratios that will determine whether his daughters remain safe. They're already here, Margaret reports grimly, monitoring communications traffic that reveals coordination between Morrison's remaining forces and elements that operate with capabilities beyond anything domestic criminals could possess. Russian, Chinese, and Iranian intelligence assets have been pre-positioned throughout Colorado in anticipation of exactly this scenario. The revelation hits the operations center like a physical blow, as everyone realizes they're not just fighting corrupt American officials, but a coordinated international effort to prevent exposure of the largest intelligence breach in history. How many? Hayes asks, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who has faced impossible odds and survived through superior planning and unshakable determination. Best estimates suggest 30 to 40 foreign operatives with military-grade equipment and authorization for unlimited collateral damage. Margaret replies, her analysis based on intercepts that paint a terrifying picture of the forces now arrayed against them. Michael studies force disposition maps that show their own assets scattered across multiple operational areas, while enemy forces concentrate for decisive action. We're outnumbered and outpositioned. Standard military doctrine would recommend immediate withdrawal to defensible positions. Except withdrawal means abandoning the evidence we've gathered and allowing Morrison to escape justice, Rachel observes, understanding that tactical retreat equals strategic defeat when fighting enemies who control official channels of authority. And it means accepting that Thomas died for nothing, Hayes adds, her voice carrying the grief of someone who has lost too many friends to corruption and betrayal. That American intelligence will continue serving foreign masters instead of American interests. The weight of decision settles over the operations center as everyone realizes they face the classic military dilemma of accepting tactical disadvantage to achieve strategic objectives that transcend immediate survival. But before anyone can voice the choice between retreat and almost certain destruction, new intelligence changes everything. Priority communication from Asset Lazarus comes an urgent voice through encrypted channels. Morrison's foreign allies have just made a critical error that exposes them to immediate neutralization. What kind of error? Margaret asks, noting how the voice carries excitement that suggests opportunity rather than additional threat. They've activated sleeper agents embedded in Peterson Air Force Base itself, the report continues. Military counterintelligence has been tracking these assets for months, waiting for them to reveal their operational network. Morrison's desperation just gave us the excuse to roll up the entire foreign intelligence presence in Colorado. Rachel recognizes the strategic significance immediately, her corporate background providing insight into how superior resources can overcome tactical disadvantages. The military isn't just our ally in this operation. They've been running their own parallel investigation, using us as bait to expose foreign intelligence networks they couldn't penetrate through normal counterintelligence methods. Exactly, Hayes confirms with satisfaction that speaks of coordination planned at levels far above anything Rachel had imagined. Morrison thinks he's calling in support from foreign allies. Actually, he's exposing them to American military forces that have been waiting years for this opportunity. Michael's tactical assessment rapidly incorporates this new intelligence, calculating how military intervention changes force ratios and operational possibilities. Timeline for military action. Already in progress, Margaret reports, monitoring communications that reveal coordinated strikes against foreign intelligence assets throughout the region. Air Force security forces are moving against Peterson Base infiltrators, while FBI counterintelligence teams eliminate sleeper agents at civilian locations. The operations center erupts in controlled activity as teams coordinate with military forces that transform their desperate situation into overwhelming advantage. But Rachel notices something that troubles her about the perfect timing of military intervention. Director Hayes, how long has the military been aware of our operations? She asks, recognizing patterns that suggest coordination rather than coincidence. Since the beginning, Hayes admits, with the smile of someone whose carefully laid plans are finally reaching fruition. Thomas wasn't just our founding member, he was also our liaison with military counterintelligence elements who shared our concerns about foreign penetration of American intelligence agencies. So this entire operation has been a joint civilian-military effort to expose and eliminate foreign intelligence networks that normal channels couldn't touch, Rachel concludes, understanding flooding through her as she recognizes the true scope of what her brother initiated before his death. Thomas called it Operation Patriot's Dawn, Hayes continues, her voice carrying reverence for a man whose vision is finally being realized. The restoration of American intelligence integrity through cooperation between honorable people regardless of their official positions. Michael monitors tactical communications that show Morrison's forces being systematically isolated and eliminated by the coordinated action of military units and intelligence professionals who refuse to tolerate treason disguised as government service. Morrison's main force is pinned at the Colorado Springs facility. He reports with satisfaction that speaks of justice finally being served. Military units have the buildings surrounded while our teams control all escape routes. And Morrison himself, Rachel asks, knowing that the deputy director's capture or elimination represents the culmination of everything they've fought to achieve. Trapped in his command center with approximately 12 remaining personnel, Margaret confirms, monitoring real-time surveillance that shows their primary target's desperate situation. He has one final card to play, but playing it will complete his own destruction. Rachel recognizes the psychological profile of a cornered adversary with nothing left to lose. Someone who might choose mutual destruction over personal defeat. What's his final card? Threatening to release classified information that could compromise ongoing operations and endanger American personnel worldwide, Hayes explains grimly. It's the standard playbook for intelligence officials who face exposure. Threaten massive collateral damage unless granted immunity. Will it work? Michael asks, though his expression suggests he already knows the answer from his own experience with government agencies that prioritize institutional protection over justice. Not this time, Hayes replies with cold certainty. Morrison's threats are empty because we've already secured or neutralized everything he might use for leverage. Thomas made sure of that before he died. The final phase of Operation Patriot's Dawn unfolds with the mechanical precision of a well-designed clock as military and intelligence assets coordinate to eliminate the last vestiges of foreign intelligence penetration within American government agencies. But Rachel's attention focuses on more personal considerations as she realizes their victory means reunion with the children who have become the center of her world. Michael, when will we see Sophie and Sarah? She asks, noting how his expression softens whenever his daughters are mentioned, despite the tactical situation still requiring his professional attention. As soon as Morrison is in custody and we've confirmed elimination of all foreign assets in the operational area, he replies, his voice carrying the careful control of someone who refuses to celebrate victory before it's completely secured. Contact from Overwatch Actual comes a new voice through communication systems, carrying the authority of someone at the highest levels of military command. Primary target has indicated willingness to surrender in exchange for protective custody and plea agreement consideration. Hayes' expression hardens with determination that speaks of too many years watching corrupt officials escape justice through political maneuvering and bureaucratic manipulation. Negative on plea agreements. Morrison faces full prosecution for treason, murder, and conspiracy. No deals, no immunity, no reduced sentences. Understood, comes the immediate reply. Military units are prepared to resolve the situation through whatever means prove necessary. Rachel watches Hayes coordinate the final elements of an operation that will either restore integrity to American intelligence or result in its complete transformation under new leadership committed to constitutional principles rather than personal advancement. Director Hayes, what happens after Morrison is eliminated? She asks, recognizing that victory in this battle might only be the beginning of a larger war against corruption that extends throughout government institutions. We rebuild, Hayes replies simply. We restore honor to agencies that have forgotten their true purpose. We eliminate foreign influence from American intelligence operations. And we ensure that people like Thomas are never again sacrificed to protect corrupt officials. And those of us who participated in tonight's operations, Hayes' smile suggests she's been planning for this question since the operation began. You return to civilian life with the knowledge that you've served your country in its hour of greatest need. Or if you prefer, you help us build intelligence agencies worthy of the Constitution we've sworn to protect. The offer hangs in the air between them as Rachel realizes she's being invited to join an organization that represents everything she's learned to value through her association with Michael and his family: honor, courage, and commitment to principles that transcend personal advancement. I'd like to help rebuild, she says quietly, making a decision that will define the rest of her life. Thomas started something important here. I want to help finish it. Final report from tactical teams, Margaret announces, monitoring communications that confirm the systematic elimination of Morrison's remaining forces. Primary target is in custody, all foreign assets have been neutralized, and operational security is fully restored. Michael's shoulders relax slightly as he receives confirmation that the threat to his daughters has been permanently eliminated. Status on package security? Green across all parameters, comes Carson's voice, steady and professional, despite the relief evident in his tone. Subjects are asking when they can see Daddy and Miss Rachel. Tell them now, Michael replies, his voice carrying emotions held in check throughout days of mortal danger. Tell them the bad people are gone and we're coming home. As they prepare to leave the operations center that has served as headquarters for one of the most successful counterintelligence operations in American history, Rachel realizes she's no longer the same person who crashed her car by Michael's fence line less than a week ago. She's become someone who understands that honor matters more than profit, that courage defines character more than success, and that family consists of people willing to risk everything for each other, regardless of blood relationships or official obligations. Ready to go home? Michael asks, his question carrying implications that extend far beyond simple physical relocation. Yes, Rachel replies, knowing that home is no longer a place but a family that includes a decorated soldier and two remarkable children who have taught her the true meaning of love, loyalty, and belonging. They drive through the Colorado dawn toward the secure facility where Sophie and Sarah wait for their return. Two adults who have discovered that the most important battles are fought not for nations or corporations, but for the right of innocent children to grow up in a world where good people protect them from evil. 6 months later, Rachel Blackwood stands in the kitchen of the rebuilt Reynolds farmhouse, watching Michael teach his daughters advanced marksmanship techniques that disguise serious tactical training as family recreation time. The house bears no trace of the violence that once threatened to destroy everything they hold dear, but subtle security modifications ensure such threats will never again find them unprepared. Miss Rachel, come help us, Sophie calls, her voice carrying the absolute confidence children possess when surrounded by adults who have proven their ability to protect what matters most. In a minute, sweetheart, Rachel replies, checking communication devices that keep her connected to intelligence operations that continue the work Thomas began years ago. Director Hayes' organization has evolved into something approaching a shadow CIA, staffed by honorable professionals committed to serving America rather than personal ambition. Any interesting developments? Michael asks, noting how naturally Rachel has assumed the role of intelligence liaison while maintaining her primary identity as the woman who completes their family. Morrison's prosecution is proceeding exactly as planned, she reports with satisfaction that speaks of justice finally being served. His foreign intelligence contacts are being systematically eliminated through operations that officially never happened. And our friends in the shadow intelligence community? Growing stronger every day, Rachel confirms, her voice carrying pride in work that matters more than anything she accomplished as a corporate executive. Turns out there are more honorable people in government than we imagined. They just needed leadership and coordination to become effective. Michael nods, understanding that their victory over Morrison was only the beginning of a larger campaign to restore integrity to institutions that had lost their way through corruption and foreign influence. Daddy, Miss Rachel, come shoot with us, Sarah insists, her shy nature overcome by excitement at demonstrating skills their father has taught them over months of careful training. Coming, sweetheart, Rachel calls, removing the engagement ring Michael placed on her finger during a simple ceremony attended by intelligence professionals who have become the closest thing to family any of them possess outside their immediate circle. As they join the girls for an afternoon of target practice disguised as family recreation, Rachel reflects on the unlikely journey that brought her from corporate boardrooms to Montana rangeland, from pursuing profit to protecting principles, from isolation to belonging. Thomas would be proud, Michael observes quietly, watching Rachel guide Sophie through sight alignment with the patience of someone who understands that teaching children properly is the most important mission anyone can accept. He'd be proud of all of us, Rachel replies, her voice carrying gratitude for the brother whose sacrifice made possible everything they've achieved. He always said the most important victories are won by people who choose to fight for something larger than themselves. The afternoon sun settles over the Montana landscape as four people who have become a family in every way that matters continue their preparation for whatever challenges the future might bring. They've learned that safety is temporary, that evil never rests, and that the price of freedom is constant vigilance by people willing to sacrifice everything for principles that transcend personal survival. But they've also learned that honor survives, that courage inspires courage, and that love provides strength sufficient for any trial when shared among people committed to protecting each other from forces that would destroy everything worth preserving. As evening approaches and they return to the farmhouse that has become their sanctuary and fortress, Rachel Blackwood knows with absolute certainty that she's found her true calling in life. Not as a corporate executive pursuing profit, not as a fugitive running from overwhelming forces, but as a protector of innocence, a defender of justice, and a member of a family that will never surrender to those who would corrupt what America represents. The war against corruption continues in shadows most Americans never see, fought by people whose names will never appear in history books, but whose sacrifice ensures that freedom survives for future generations. And Rachel Blackwood, once a CEO concerned only with market share and quarterly profits, now understands that the most important battles are won not by those who seek glory, but by those who choose duty over comfort, principle over pragmatism, and family over everything else the world might offer. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new threats to confront, new missions to complete in service of ideals that transcend individual survival. But tonight, as she helps Michael prepare dinner while Sophie and Sarah share stories of their day, Rachel knows that she's exactly where she belongs, home with a family worth dying for and principles worth living for. The Guardian's promise has been kept, justice has been served, and love has transformed four individual lives into something approaching perfection. In a world where corruption seems omnipresent and evil appears unstoppable, the Reynolds family stands as proof that honor survives, that courage conquers fear, and that the most important victories are achieved by ordinary people who choose to do extraordinary things when everything they love hangs in the balance. The seasons change over the Reynolds ranch as winter gives way to spring, then summer, each passing month bringing new challenges that test the bonds forged in crisis and strengthen the family that emerged from chaos. Rachel has officially adopted Sophie and Sarah, a legal formality that recognizes emotional reality established through shared danger and mutual protection. Mommy Rachel, tell us again about how you met Daddy, Sophie requests during one of their evening storytelling sessions, her young mind fascinated by the romantic elements of a tale that began with violence and ended with love. Well, Rachel begins, settling into the familiar rhythm of a story she's told countless times with variations that emphasize different aspects depending on the girl's moods and needs. I was driving through Montana when my car broke down near Daddy's ranch. I was scared and hurt, but Daddy saw someone who needed help and decided to be brave. And then you fell in love, Sarah adds with the matter-of-fact acceptance children show for adult relationships they don't fully understand but recognize as fundamental to their security. Not immediately. Hey, Rachel corrects gently, aware that the true story involves complexities inappropriate for 6-year-old ears. First, we had to learn to trust each other. Then we had to work together to solve some very difficult problems. Michael listens from the kitchen, where he's cleaning weapons with a methodical precision that has become evening routine, maintaining equipment that might be needed if their peaceful existence is threatened by enemies who remain at large, despite Morrison's elimination. The difficult problems were bad people trying to hurt our family. Sophie continues, her understanding of recent events filtered through explanations carefully crafted to provide truth without trauma. That's right, Rachel confirms. And Daddy showed me what it means to fight for people you love, even when it's dangerous. The bedtime ritual continues with prayers that acknowledge both gratitude for current blessings and awareness that protection requires constant vigilance by people willing to sacrifice comfort for security. Michael and Rachel have learned that peace must be actively maintained rather than passively enjoyed. After the girls are settled in their rooms, Michael and Rachel review intelligence reports that arrive through encrypted channels, maintaining awareness of global situations that might eventually threaten their Montana sanctuary. Their roles have evolved from active operators to strategic coordinators, providing analysis and support for missions conducted by younger personnel. Anything interesting from Director Hayes? Michael asks. noting how Rachel's expression suggests significant developments in operations they help coordinate from their ranch headquarters. Russian intelligence is still trying to reestablish networks Morrison compromised, she reports, her analytical skills now focused on threats to national security rather than corporate competition. But they're having difficulty recruiting new sets because word has spread about what happens to people who betray American interests. Good, Michael replies with satisfaction. That speaks of professional pride in work that continues to matter long after their active participation ended. Fear is an excellent deterrent when applied to people who consider treason a career option. Their evening routine includes tactical planning disguised as family preparation, discussing contingencies for scenarios that might require immediate evacuation or defensive action. The girls participate unknowingly through games and exercises that build skills they might need if peaceful existence proves temporary. Sophie's marksmanship scores are improving consistently, Michael observes, reviewing training records that document his daughter's developing capabilities. Sarah shows natural aptitude for surveillance detection and counter-surveillance techniques. They're learning from excellent teachers, Rachel notes, recognizing how Michael's instruction combines parental love with professional competence that provides the girls with skills most children never acquire. You're contributing more than you realize, Michael corrects, noting how Rachel's corporate background provides unique perspectives on threat assessment and strategic planning. Your ability to think like our enemies gives us advantages we wouldn't possess otherwise. The compliment settles around Rachel like warmth, recognition from someone whose professional opinion matters more than any corporate board approval ever did. She's found purpose that transcends personal achievement, satisfaction that comes from protecting innocence rather than pursuing profit. As summer progresses, their ranch becomes an unofficial training center for intelligence professionals who need to understand how honor-based operations differ from traditional bureaucratic methods. Young agents arrive for education that emphasizes principle over protocol, courage over caution, and family loyalty over institutional advancement. Today's lesson focuses on threat assessment in domestic environments, Rachel announces to a class of 12 operatives who represent the new generation of American intelligence professionals. Corporate infiltration techniques provide excellent preparation for understanding how foreign intelligence services penetrate American institutions. Michael demonstrates tactical procedures that combine military precision with civilian sensibilities, showing how protection can be provided without creating fear in those being protected. His students learn that true security comes from strength applied wisely rather than force applied indiscriminately. The goal isn't to eliminate all threats, he explains while reviewing defensive positions around the ranch perimeter. The goal is to create environments where threats reveal themselves before they can achieve objectives. Sophie and Sarah participate in training exercises, their presence reminding everyone that protecting children requires adults who understand the difference between necessary vigilance and paranoid isolation. The girls' laughter echoes across training grounds that prepare warriors for battles they hope will never be fought. "Uncle Tom, watch me hit the target," Sophie calls to Carson, who has become permanent ranch security and honorary family member. His military background provides additional protection, while his genuine affection for the girls ensures they never feel like prisoners in their own home. "Outstanding shooting, little warrior," Carson replies with pride that reflects his investment in training the next generation to protect itself when current guardians are no longer available. Rachel watches these interactions with emotions that combine joy and concern, recognizing how their children are being prepared for a world where innocence must be protected by people willing to sacrifice their own for principles larger than personal survival. "Sometimes I wonder if we're giving them childhoods or preparing them for war," she confesses to Michael during one of their evening conversations that have become essential for processing the complexities of their unusual existence. "We're giving them the ability to choose," Michael replies with the wisdom of someone who has seen what happens to unprepared innocence when evil decides they represent obstacles to be eliminated. Knowledge and skills they can use or ignore, depending on what kind of world they inherit from our generation. The autumn brings news that Morrison's trial has concluded with convictions on all charges, sentences that will ensure he spends the remainder of his life in federal prison under conditions that prevent communication with former associates or foreign handlers. Justice has been served, but Rachel and Michael understand that victory in one battle doesn't guarantee victory in the larger war. Foreign intelligence services are adapting their penetration methods, Hayes reports during one of their monthly secure video conferences. They've learned to avoid individuals with military backgrounds or obvious patriotic motivations, focusing instead on people motivated by ideology rather than money. Ideological recruitment is more dangerous than financial recruitment, Rachel observes from her experience analyzing corporate espionage cases that often involved employees who betrayed their companies for philosophical rather than monetary reasons. Agreed, Hayes confirms. Which is why we need operatives who understand that defending America means more than following orders or collecting paychecks. We need people who fight for principles they're willing to die for. Michael and Rachel exchange glances that carry complete understanding, developed through shared trials that tested every aspect of their relationship. They've become exactly the kind of people Hayes describes. Warriors motivated by love of family and country rather than career advancement or financial reward. What do you need from us? Michael asks, though his expression suggests he already knows the answer from previous conversations about expanding their ranch-based training programs. More of what you are already providing, Hayes replies. Education for young operatives who need to understand that intelligence work serves constitutional principles rather than bureaucratic convenience. And families like yours that demonstrate what we're fighting to protect. The responsibility settles over them like a comfortable weight, recognition that their personal happiness serves larger purposes beyond individual satisfaction. They've become symbols of what American intelligence agencies can achieve when staffed by people who place honor above advancement and family above career. As winter returns to Montana, bringing snow that transforms their ranch into a winter wonderland, Rachel reflects on the journey that brought her from corporate boardrooms to this kitchen where she prepares dinner for a family that began as strangers and became the center of her universe. Any regrets? Michael asks, noting how she sometimes pauses during routine activities with expressions that suggest deep consideration of choices made and paths taken. Only that Thomas didn't live to see what his sacrifice accomplished, she replies honestly, her voice carrying grief that has evolved from sharp pain to bittersweet gratitude for a brother whose death made possible everything she now treasures. He sees it, Michael assures her, with conviction born from his own relationship with fallen comrades who continue to influence his decisions despite their physical absence. Military people understand that some missions extend beyond individual lifetimes. Do you think the girls will choose this life when they're older? Rachel asks, watching Sophie and Sarah build snow forts with tactical precision that reflects their unconventional education. I think they'll choose whatever life allows them to protect people they love, Michael replies, recognizing in his daughters the same moral compass that has guided his own choices throughout his adult life. Like their father, Rachel observes with love that encompasses not just Michael, but the values he represents and the legacy he's creating through his dedication to family and principle. Like their mother too, Michael corrects gently, noting how Rachel's transformation from corporate executive to intelligence professional demonstrates that honor can emerge from any background when circumstances require moral courage. The evening settles over their ranch with the peaceful quiet that comes from security earned through vigilance, sacrifice, and the unwavering commitment of people who understand that freedom requires constant protection by those willing to pay its price. As they prepare for another night in the home they've built together, Michael and Rachel know that tomorrow will bring new challenges, new threats to assess, new missions to coordinate from their ranch headquarters that serves American interests while protecting the family that has become their most precious achievement. Thank you, Rachel says quietly as they check on sleeping daughters who dream peaceful dreams because adults they trust have accepted responsibility for their protection. For what? Michael asks, though his expression suggests he understands the gratitude that encompasses everything from initial rescue to ongoing protection to the love that has transformed all their lives. For showing me what matters, Rachel replies simply, for teaching me that honor isn't just a word but a way of life, for giving me a family worth fighting for and principles worth dying for. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight, Michael Reynolds and Rachel Blackwood rest in the knowledge that they've found their true purpose in life, protecting innocence, defending justice, and proving that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things when motivated by love that transcends personal considerations. In a world where corruption seems omnipresent and evil appears unstoppable, the Reynolds family stands as proof that honor survives, that courage conquers fear, and that the most important victories are achieved by people who choose to fight for principles that matter more than personal survival. Their story continues, but the foundation has been established for whatever trials the future might bring. They are family, they are warriors, and they are guardians of values that define what America represents when it lives up to its highest ideals.